What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees and rank them from worst to best by year. Done such years in the past, such as the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, work my way through the 2020s, and of course, currently the 1980s. I've done 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, and you guessed it because you clicked on this video. I'm doing the 1989 Academy Award Best Picture nominees and ranking them from worst to best. Now, 1989 was a year that's similar to the other films of the 80s. There were 5 Best Picture nominees, so I'll be ranking them from 5 being the worst to 1 being the best. And of course, my humble opinion, as well as Gal from Film Toppings. That's right, I'm collaborating with him once again. If you haven't done so already, definitely subscribe to his channel. He is really, really good in terms of film criticism and analyzing both films and TV shows. So I'll be putting the link for his stuff, of course, in the content down below. But I'm looking forward to seeing his ranking, as well as we'll go from his 5-1 to then my 5-1, and then we'll wrap things up. So guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. Gal, take it away.
What's up, Chad and Chad Subordinate subscribers? Balaban here from Film Toppings. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Letterboxd with that name. And today I'm going to be joining Chad as we count down the nominees for 1989's Best Picture category. This was a very interesting year with multiple iconic movies being nominated. And one of those years where the winner was, collectively hated. Even now, 35 years later, this movie is still greatly disliked. And that is my number 5 to kick us off, Driving Miss Daisy. This is the movie that won, and though I still enjoy this movie, I don't think it holds up as well as some of the other movies that came out that year. Even movies that weren't nominated that had to do with race, like Glory and Do the Right Thing, are so much more iconic, in my opinion, than Driving Miss Daisy. I feel like this is such an old people's movie because it's very comfortable. It's very charming the way Green Book is. And I'm not going to take away that Morgan Freeman is terrific in it. Jessica Tandy definitely deserved her Oscar, and they work really well together. Dan Aykroyd is a lot of fun too. But there's something about it that's a little too cheesy. It plays it very safe compared to these other films that we're going to talk about. I don't think it reaches those emotional heights of the other films that were nominated, and that's why it's at the bottom of my ranking. And number 4 is My Left Foot. I mean, we're not going to argue about how great Daniel Day-Lewis is in this movie. He got his first of 3 Academy Awards, and Brenda Fricker is also outstanding. She won her Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and I think this is the only thing I've seen her in besides the pigeon lady in Home Alone 2. So that was really fun for me to watch this movie and realize that. Not to mention, I just think it's a really well-staged movie when it comes to, Jim Sheridan always paying tribute to his Irish roots. That said, I think it could be paced a little better, even considering it's only like an hour and 40 minutes. And this probably isn't my favorite Jim Sheridan movie compared to another film he made with Daniel Day-Lewis called In the Name of the Father, which is incredible. But they did do a poll recently to see how well the Driving Miss Daisy win holds up. And the most Academy voters said they would have picked this movie over Driving Miss Daisy had they done the vote today. Number 3 is Born on the 4th of July. One of Oliver Stone's most impactful movies. He makes the story of this character feel so big as well as tragic. There's some very extended scenes that we spend with Tom Cruise in the hospital, which are simply heartbreaking. Not to mention Willem Dafoe is really good. He's in the movie a lot. And the way this character becomes this sort of anti-Vietnam image, I think is really intriguing. Oliver Stone's directing in particular, I think is fantastic. And it's important to note that this is the movie that won Best Director that year. And the war scenes are really good, but it also delivers a different perspective than most war films, even Platoon gives us. Number 2 is Field of Dreams. This is such an enjoyable and iconic movie and one of my favorite Kevin Costner performances. It's got such a lovely message about how pop culture and sports and world events can bring us all together and make us have these collective memories as a culture. Not only is Kevin Costner great in it, but James Earl Jones is terrific as Terrence Mann, who's this writer that joins forces with him. And the idea is really sweet, particularly the father-son memories dynamic. And the final scene is really beautifully done and Costner is terrific in that last scene. Number 1 on my ranking for this year is Dead Poets Society. Iconic, impactful, beautiful, cathartic. What is there not to be said about this movie? It's one of Robin Williams' most brilliant turns as John Keating. I'm never going to forget that character's name because the character is so lovely and the way he delivers his lines with such passion. Why do we study poetry? It's such a fantastic movie. Ethan Hawke, Robert Sean Leonard, and there's so many just big moments that show like what should youth aspire to be. And this is such a memorable movie. I saw it for the first time when I was like 13. And when that final scene kicks in, that's sort of a moment that no one ever forgets in cinema history. So thank you very much. That's my ranking of the 5 movies nominated for Best Picture in 1989. Back to you, Chad.
All right. Once again, thank you very much for being on my channel. Guys, subscribe to him, please. He is someone that I greatly respect, and I look forward to collaborating many more times in the future. But without further ado, let's get started with my 5 to 1. So kicking things off, my number 5, we have Driving Miss Daisy. That's right. This is the film that won Best Picture in 1989. And this was a film that when I first saw nearly a decade ago, I loved it. I thought it was a really good film, greatly respected it. But then I rewatched it a year or so ago, and I didn't quite like it as much. In fact, I found it to be a rather middle-of-the-road movie. I think the cinematography is nice to look at. It's very well acted. It doesn't necessarily do anything wrong. It is competently made, but it's a very, very safe film. It's a film that you can imagine watching with boomers. Which, again, nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just when you think of Best Picture, especially when you look at the other 4 nominees, this is just one that sticks out, and not for the right reasons. It's a film that sticks out as a very safe film that just doesn't really do anything. It's inoffensive, and for some people, that might be okay, but for me, it's a film that it's tackling racism, and I do think that there are far better films. For crying out loud, I own a film called Do the Right Thing, came out the same year. I think maybe that should have been nominated instead, but that's just me. But Driving Miss Daisy. It's my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have, let me get the Blu-ray, Field of Dreams. So Field of Dreams, it's a film that when I saw back in 2015, I loved it so much so that I picked it up on Blu-ray. And I think I saw it another 1 or 2 times before rewatching a couple years ago. And all the other times that I saw it, I loved it, hence why I own it on Blu-ray. But when I rewatched it not too long ago, I didn't quite like it as much. I thought it was okay to solid. I think that it is a perfectly fine film. I love James Horner's score. I do like with what it's trying to go for in terms of the themes of like father-son relationships. That is fascinating. I definitely see why it's considered a Father Day classic for sure. And I like baseball just as much as the next person. But I think that it is a bit too schmaltzy in some instances. And I don't know if just maybe I've gotten, all Scrooge-esque over the years. But I would definitely say that the love for this has dwindled quite a bit since my recent viewing. But nonetheless, I'm still glad I own this on Blu-ray. I can see why it got a Best Picture nomination. But at the same time, if there are people that don't necessarily like this film, I can see that. I can definitely understand that because it is kind of mawkish. But at the same time, like I said, I did enjoy this film. That's why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3, we have My Left Foot. So My Left Foot, it's a great example of a performance elevating the film. I remember the first time I saw this film, I loved it so much because of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. And then when I rewatched it, probably about 6 years ago, I realized that I loved it so much because of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. I think that's a great performance, easily one of the best I've ever seen. Everything else surrounding Daniel Day-Lewis is not at that same level, though. Everything else is fine. It's perfectly fine. It works. And I think that it's finely directed. I think that it's just one of those things, though, that when you think about the film, everything else just, it kind of becomes white noise as opposed to just focusing on Daniel Day-Lewis's magnificent performance. That's just me, though. Like I said, I'm saying this as someone that used to love this film. Now, I do think it's really good. But I don't love it. Because, again, it's not like There Will Be Blood or Lincoln where it's like, I love Daniel Day-Lewis's performances for sure in those films, but everything surrounding him really at the same time is almost at the same level. As opposed to something like this, I just feel like everything surrounding him isn't nearly at that level. So, again, really good film. That's why I have it as my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have Born on the 4th of July. So this is an Oliver Stone directed film, and as I said in my Platoon review, Oliver Stone was a Vietnam vet. So a film like this, a film like Platoon, those are 2 films that clearly meant a lot to him because he's going from his own experience. And Born on the 4th of July, it actually won Best Director for Oliver Stone. And you can definitely see why, because it's quite the journey. It is a film that makes you feel so many different emotions. You really, really care about Tom Cruise's character, and I think his performance is magnificent, easily one of the best. I like John Williams' score. I do like the way that it's shot. It's just overall a very sad film, but it is very effective with what it sets out to do, and I think it does achieve that to an extent. So I like this film quite a bit. And I would definitely recommend watching it. I do think that it's a must-watch. Similar to Platoon, even if you don't like war films, I still think it's a necessity to view at least once. Just so people have an idea on the mindset of people that were in war, have PTSD, come back, and just their lives are changed forever. I think this film does a great job of depicting that. That's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1. This is the film that it's just one of my favorite inspirational films. My number 1 is Dead Poets Society. So this is a film that it was Ethan Hawke, I believe it was his debut film, but Ethan Hawke's in this, and of course Robin Williams. And Robin Williams is incredible. Definitely one of his best performances. And I think the score is great. I love the cinematography. I think thematically it is a very rich film. It is also a film that, as I mentioned, is quite inspirational. One of my favorite ending, I think that ending scene, Carpe Diem Seize the Day, is just truly incredible. And again, thematically, those themes really resonate with me. I think this is definitely a film that's fantastic. It's one of, if not my favorite Peter Weir film, and just overall a great film. So I would have given Best Picture to this film, but this, My Life Twitter, Born on the 4th of July, if either of those 3 won Best Picture, I would have been happy. I wasn't happy in retrospect seeing Driving Miss Daisy won Best Picture. Something like this, I think that it would have been really nice to see it win Best Picture. So yeah, I love Dead Poets Society. That's why it's my number 1. But yeah, guys, that's my ranking for the 1989 Academy Award Best Picture nominees, as well as Gal from Film Toppings, his ranking as well. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, as well as Patreon, as well as don't forget to follow Gal from Film Toppings. I'll put his stuff down below. And as always, guys, I really appreciate your guys' support, and catch you guys later.